The deed to my family's 200-acre estate, the land my soul was knit from, the only thing I had left of my father, was held in my cousin's smug, manicured hands. "You'll never own this land, Amelia," she said, her voice a venomous whisper in the too-clean air of the lawyer's office. "A sentimental fool like you wouldn't know what to do with it. You'd probably turn it into a sanctuary for injured butterflies and bankrupt us all." She laughed, a sound like ice cracking on a deep, dangerous lake. "It's mine. It's always been meant to be mine." And in that moment, as the weight of her betrayal crushed the air from my lungs, I made a silent promise to myself, to my father, to the very soil of Oakhaven. I would watch her world burn to the ground, and I would use the heat to warm my hands. But before we get into all of that, if you're someone who believes in justice, in fighting back when the world tries to break you, then you're in the right place. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications on, because what happened next, well, it's a story I tell only once. I need to take you back to paint the picture of what I lost. My name is Amelia Reed, and my entire life was steeped in the scent of old wood, rich earth, and the distant, sweet smell of the apple orchards that bordered our property. Oakhaven wasn't just a house. It was a living, breathing member of our family. A sprawling Queen Anne Victorian that my great-great-grandfather built with his own hands after the Civil War, all gingerbread trim, wraparound porches, and secrets whispered in the creaks of its floorboards. My father, William Reed, was the proudest caretaker of them all. He wasn't just the owner, he was the heart of the place. "Daddy's little sapling," he'd call me, hoisting me onto his shoulders as we walked the property lines every Sunday after church. "You see that, Mia? This isn't just dirt and trees. This is legacy. This is where our roots go so deep. No storm can ever tear us down." I'd grip his hair, my small hands tangled in his dark curls, and believe him with every fiber of my being. My cousin, Chloe, spent every summer at Oakhaven. She was the daughter of my father's estranged brother, a man who'd chased fast money and faster women and ended up with very little of either. Aunt Sharon would dump Chloe on our doorstep every June, a sullen, beautiful girl with eyes too old for her face and a permanent resentment simmering just beneath her skin. My mother, a saint with flour perpetually dusting her apron, would cluck her tongue and welcome her in. "The child needs stability, William," she'd say. "She needs to know what family feels like." And we tried. God, did we try. I'd share my room, my toys, my clothes. I'd show her my favorite hiding spots in the barn loft, the best trees for climbing, the secret creek where the water ran ice cold, even in August. "It must be nice," Chloe said one afternoon, her voice dripping with the sarcasm I was too young to understand. We were 10, lying on our stomachs in the hayloft, watching the dust motes dance in the slants of sunlight. "What is?" I asked, popping a handful of blackberries into my mouth. "To know all of this will be yours one day, to never have to wonder where you'll sleep next Christmas." I frowned. "It's everybody's. It's family's." She snorted, a surprisingly ugly sound from such a pretty girl. "No, it's not. Don't be stupid, Amelia. Your dad owns it. That means it's yours. My dad doesn't own anything." There was a bitterness in her voice that tasted like unripe persimmon, sharp and unpleasant. I reached out, a gesture of innocent comfort, and put my sticky hand on her arm. "You can always live here with me. We can be sisters for real." She looked at my hand, then at my face, and her expression softened for a fraction of a second. It was the only time I ever saw something like genuine affection there. "You're too sweet for your own good," she said, and then she shrugged my hand off. "But naive. The world doesn't work like that." That was Chloe. She'd let you in just enough to make you believe you'd connected, only to shut the door firmly in your face the second you tried to get too close. I learned to stop trying. Our lives diverged. I went to college, studied agricultural science, and came right back home to work the land alongside my father. I wanted to modernize the orchards, introduce sustainable practices, maybe open a small farm-to-table shop on the property. Daddy loved my ideas. He'd clap me on the back, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's my girl. You've got the vision, Mia. Oakhaven's future is safe with you. Chloe, meanwhile, became a phantom. She'd drift in and out of our lives, usually when she needed something. A loan to cover a tuition bill that I later found out was a gambling debt, a place to stay after a messy breakup with a boyfriend we never met. She'd show up with expensive gifts, a silk scarf for Mom, a fancy bottle of scotch for Dad, that felt less like gifts and more like payments on a debt we didn't know we were incurring. The first real crack in our family's foundation appeared on a perfect autumn day. The air was crisp, smelling of wood smoke and decaying leaves. The trees were a brilliant tapestry of red and gold. Dad and I were out by the old barn, assessing the roof for repairs. Mom was inside, baking her famous apple pie, the cinnamon scent weaving its way through the entire property. It was a scene from a painting, a postcard of contentment. Chloe's sports car, a flashy red thing that looked absurd on our gravel driveway, crunched to a halt. She emerged, not in her usual city slicker attire, but in designer jeans and riding boots, as if she'd just come from mucking out stables. "Uncle William," she called, her voice a bright, false melody. She air-kissed his cheek. "Amelia, you both look so rustic." Dad laughed, not hearing the condescension that rang in my ears like a struck bell. "Chloe, what a wonderful surprise. Your aunt's just inside. She'll be thrilled to see you." "Actually," Chloe said, linking her arm through his, "I came to see you. I have a proposition." She led him toward the porch swing, leaving me standing by the barn, feeling suddenly like a hired hand. I followed, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. I perched on the porch railing, the rough wood catching on my jeans. "It's about the future, Uncle William," Chloe began, her voice taking on a syrupy, sincere tone I distrusted immediately. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About family. About legacy." She sighed, a practiced, wistful sound. "I know I haven't always been as present as I should have been. The city life, it changes you, makes you forget what's important." Dad patted her hand. "You're here now, honey. That's what matters." "I want to be more involved," she said, leaning forward, her eyes wide and earnest. "I want to learn the business, the real business of running Oakhaven. I have connections, in development, in high-end retail. I look at this place and I don't just see a farm. I see potential. A destination. We could build a luxury inn, a world-class spa, a Michelin-starred restaurant right here. We'd be swimming in money." The air went out of me. Development? A spa? It was everything my father had ever fought against. Everything we both loved Oakhaven for not being. Dad's smile had frozen on his face. "Oh, Chloe Bug," he said, using his old childhood nickname for her. That's not what Oakhaven is. This is a home, a working farm. It's not a resort." Chloe's face didn't fall. It just shifted. The earnestness evaporated, replaced by a sharp, calculating coolness. "It's a business, Uncle William. A failing one, if we're being honest. The profit margins on apples and hayrides are a joke. You're sitting on a gold mine, and you're using it to plant corn." "We do just fine," Dad said, his voice losing some of its warmth. "Do you?" she pressed. "What about the new tractor you need? The property taxes that keep going up? Amelia can't magic that money out of the dirt with her compost piles and heirloom seeds." The way she said my name, laced with such derision, made me flinch. I found my voice. "We have a 5-year plan, Chloe. A sustainable one. We're not interested in turning our home into a playground for rich strangers." She turned those cold eyes on me. "It's not just your home, Amelia. It's family land. Or did you forget that I'm family too?" She looked back at Dad. "I'm just asking for a seat at the table, a chance to contribute my skills, to secure our future." Dad was silent for a long moment, looking out over the land he loved. The wind rustled the leaves of the ancient oak tree his own father had planted. "My answer is no, Chloe," he said finally, his voice quiet but firm. "This is the way your aunt and I want it. This is the way it will stay." The mask slipped completely then. For a fleeting, terrifying second, I saw pure, unadulterated hatred in her eyes. It was gone in a blink. replaced by a smooth, placid smile. "Well," she said, standing up and brushing non-existent lint from her pristine jeans. "I had to try. You can't blame a girl for dreaming big." She kissed his cheek again. "Tell Aunt Sarah." I said hello. "I've got to run. Meeting with a client." She walked to her car without a backward glance at me. The engine roared to life, and she sped down the driveway, kicking up a cloud of dust that settled over the perfect autumn day like a pall. Dad let out a long, weary sigh. "She means well, Mia. She sees the world differently than we do." A cold dread had taken root in my heart, a feeling that something precious had just been threatened, and the threat was far from over. "She doesn't mean well, Daddy," I whispered, but the wind carried my words away. Life, as it does, settled back into a rhythm. The incident with Chloe became a story we told occasionally, a funny example of City Chloe being out of touch. "Remember when she wanted to put a spa on the cow pasture?" Mom would say, and we'd all laugh. But the laughter felt forced, and I noticed Dad started spending more time in his study. The door closed, going over ledgers and documents with a deep frown on his face. I threw myself into my work. I secured a grant for sustainable irrigation. I partnered with a local brewery to grow a specific strain of hops for them. The future I wanted for Oakhaven was starting to take shape, bud by tiny bud. I was even seeing someone, a kind, solid man named Ben, who owned the local hardware store. He had calloused hands and an easy smile, and he wasn't intimidated by my passion for the land. He loved it. He'd spend weekends helping me repair fences, his presence a quiet, steady comfort. "Your dad's worried about something," Ben mentioned one evening as we were staining the new porch rails. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "I know," I said, dipping my brush into the can. "The taxes, I think. Or maybe just getting older, the weight of it all." Ben was quiet for a minute, the only sound the swish of his brush. "He met with a lawyer last week, Edward Brennan." I stopped mid-stroke. Edward Brennan was the most cutthroat estate lawyer in 3 counties. "What? Why wouldn't he tell me that?" Ben shrugged. "Maybe he didn't want to worry you. But my cousin Tracy works as a paralegal in Brennan's office. She said your dad was in there for over 2 hours. And she said your cousin Chloe was in there the very next day." The world tilted. The rich smell of the wood stains suddenly made me nauseous. "Chloe? Meeting with Daddy's lawyer?" Tracy couldn't hear anything. Client confidentiality and all that. But she said Chloe looked very pleased with herself when she left. The unease I'd managed to suppress came roaring back. Why would Chloe be meeting with Dad's lawyer? Dad had made his position clear. He wouldn't change his mind. He wouldn't. A few days later, I decided to just ask him. I brought him a cup of coffee into his study, the room that smelled of old leather, lemon polish, and my father's cologne. He was staring at a spreadsheet, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. "Daddy, can we talk?" He looked up, smiling, but the smile didn't reach his tired eyes. "Always, sapling. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath. "I heard you met with Ed Brennan." The smile vanished. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Who told you that?" "It's a small town, Dad. Why? Is everything okay? Are you sick?" The worst-case scenario flashed in my mind, stealing my breath. No, nothing like that," he said quickly. "I'm fine. It's just estate planning, Mia. It's a morbid business, but it has to be done. I just want to make sure everything is clear. No messes left behind for you and your mother to clean up." "And Chloe?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why was she meeting with him? His face closed off. It was a subtle thing, a shudder falling behind his eyes. "That's between Chloe and me, Amelia. It's family business. Don't worry about it." Don't worry about it. The 3 most worrying words in the English language. I was being shut out. And the fact that Chloe was somehow in on this family business made me feel like a stranger in my own home. The next few months were a masterclass in psychological warfare, though I didn't realize it at the time. Chloe became a constant presence. She'd show up for Sunday dinners, lavishing my parents with attention and expensive gifts. A cashmere throw for Mom. A ridiculously expensive set of golf clubs for Dad, even though he hadn't golfed in 20 years. "Oh, it's nothing," she'd say, waving a dismissive hand when my mother protested. "I just saw it and thought of you. You work so hard, you deserve a little luxury." She'd subtly turn conversations toward money. I was talking to my friend who's a financial advisor, she'd say over pot roast. He was shocked to hear you weren't leveraging the asset value of the property for investments. You could be generating a passive income stream that would set you up for life. She made our life's work sound small and foolish. She started taking my mother to lunch. Girls' days, she called them. They'd come back, Mom looking flustered and excited, carrying shopping bags from stores I knew were far beyond her comfort zone. "Chloe has such exquisite taste," Mom would gush, showing me a silk blouse with a price tag that made my eyes water. "She says I need to start dressing the part of the lady of the manor." She'd laugh, but there was a new insecurity in her eyes. Chloe was carefully, methodically, making them feel like what they had wasn't enough. That they weren't enough. She'd corner me when I was alone. "It's sweet, really?" she said one day, watching me weed the vegetable garden, her designer sunglasses reflecting my dirt-streaked face. The little farm girl playing in the mud. But don't you ever want more, Amelia? Don't you ever look at this and think, is this it? This is my whole life? "I love my life," I said, through gritted teeth, yanking a weed out by its roots. "Do you?" she mused. "Or are you just comfortable? There's a big world out there. You could leave, see things. Meet a man who doesn't smell like fertilizer and wood stain." "Ben does not smell like wood stain," I snapped. She just smiled. "If you say so." She leaned closer, her perfume, something expensive and floral, overpowering the scent of fresh-turned earth. "I'm just looking out for you, cousin. I'd hate for you to waste your pretty years on a lost cause." The escalation was slow, insidious. It started with small things. A check from a major buyer for our apple harvest would inexplicably get lost in the mail, causing a cash flow crisis. Dad would get a call from the bank about a loan payment he was sure he'd already made, only to find the check had never been cashed and was now missing from his records. Minor inconveniences, but they piled up, adding to the strain on my father's face. Then came the rumors. I started hearing them at the local farmers market. Whispered conversations would stop when I approached. People would look at me with a strange mix of pity and curiosity. I finally confronted Marianne, the owner of the flower stall, a woman who had known me since I was in diapers. "Marianne, what is going on? People are acting so strangely." She looked uncomfortable, twisting a ribbon around her fingers. "Oh, Amelia, it's probably nothing. Just talk." "What kind of talk?" She sighed. "Well, some folks are saying that Oakhaven is in real financial trouble, that your dad took out some massive loans against the property and can't pay them back, that the bank might foreclose." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What? That's not true. Who would say such a thing?" Marianne wouldn't meet my eyes. "I don't know, honey. You know how people talk. But your cousin Chloe was in here just the other day, buying a huge arrangement. I commented on it, and she said it was for your parents to cheer them up during all this stress." The pieces clicked into place with a sickening finality. Chloe. It was all Chloe. She was systematically undermining my father's financial stability and then spreading rumors to make it seem like he was a failure. She was isolating him, making him doubt himself, making the community doubt him. I drove home in a blind rage, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I burst into the house, ready to tell my parents everything. But I stopped short in the doorway to the living room. Chloe was there, of course. She was on the sofa, sitting right between my parents, her arms around them. My mother was crying softly into a tissue. "It's going to be okay, Aunt Sarah," Chloe was saying in a low, soothing voice. "We'll figure it out. That's what family is for. We stick together through the hard times." "What's going on?" I asked, my voice cold. My father looked up, his face ashen. "The bank called, Mia. The line of credit they're calling it in. The entire amount. Due in 60 days. It was a sum that was impossible for us to raise. It would force the sale of the land. "How?" I breathed. "How is this possible?" "I don't know," Dad said, his voice hollow. "I've always been timely with the payments." The manager said, there were concerns about the long-term viability of the business. He mentioned hearing about defaulting on other loans. He put his head in his hands. "I've never defaulted on anything in my life." I looked at Chloe. She met my gaze, and in the depths of her eyes, I saw it. A glimmer of triumph. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head, a silent warning. Chloe has been wonderful, my mother sniffled, patting Chloe's knee. She's offered to help. She says she has some savings she can liquidate to help us make the payment. Of course she did. She'd created the crisis, and now she was positioning herself as the savior, the hero of the story. I felt like I was going to be sick. "We can't take your money, Chloe," I said firmly. "Don't be ridiculous, Amelia," Chloe said, her voice dripping with false concern. "This is no time for pride. This is about saving Oakhaven. It's what Uncle William would want." She looked at my father. "Isn't it?" My father, broken and defeated, just nodded. "I don't see another way, Mia. I'm so sorry." The betrayal was so complete, so elegant in its cruelty that I couldn't even form words. I turned and walked out, the sound of Chloe's consoling voice following me like a curse. The next 2 months were a special kind of hell. Chloe was omnipresent. She managed the crisis, dealing with the bankers, the lawyers, all while keeping my increasingly fragile parents under her thumb. I was pushed to the sidelines, my opinions dismissed as emotional and impractical. "We have to be realistic now, Amelia," Chloe would say, her tone patronizing. "This isn't about your little organic dreams anymore. This is about survival." I tried to talk to my parents alone, to make them see what was happening, but Chloe had poisoned the well. She'd framed my suspicions as jealousy, my anger as hysterical instability. "I'm worried about her," I overheard Chloe telling my mother one night. I was standing in the dark hallway, hidden by shadow. "She's so attached to this place. It's not healthy. The stress, she's not thinking clearly. Did you know she accused me of sabotaging the business? It's just so sad." My mother made a clucking sound of sympathy. "She's just scared, Chloe. We all are. Thank God we have you. You're so strong." I leaned my forehead against the cool wall, tears of frustration and helplessness welling in my eyes. I was losing them. I was losing everything. The 60-day deadline loomed. The tension in the house was a physical thing, thick and suffocating. Then, 3 days before the payment was due, my father had a massive heart attack. It happened in his study. He collapsed over his desk, scattering papers everywhere. The sound of the crash brought us running. The aftermath is a blur of sirens, hospital waiting rooms that smelled of antiseptic and despair, and the steady, ominous beep of monitors. My mother was a ghost, clutching my hand with a strength I didn't know she possessed. Chloe took charge, of course. She spoke to the doctors. She handled the phone calls. She became the family spokesperson. I was numb, lost in a fog of grief and fear. My father held on for 2 days. 2 long, terrible days. When he finally slipped away, it was with my mother and me by his side, holding his hands. Chloe was there too, standing at the foot of the bed, her face a perfect mask of tragic concern. The world shattered. The grief was a raw, open wound. Planning the funeral was a nightmare. Mom was catatonic with loss, and I was stumbling through each day in a daze. Chloe, with her ruthless efficiency, handled everything. She chose the casket, the flowers, the music. It felt like she was erasing him, packaging his memory in a way that was neat and presentable, and utterly devoid of the man he actually was. The day after the funeral, we gathered in Mr. Brennan's office for the reading of the will. The room was dark, paneled in mahogany, smelling of old books and lemon pledge. My mother sat beside me, her hand trembling in mine. Ben was there, a solid, silent presence in the chair behind me. And Chloe, of course, sat across from us, dressed in a sleek, black designer dress, her posture perfect. Mr. Brennan, a man with a face like a mournful bloodhound, cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. He spoke in a slow, somber tone, offering condolences before opening the folder in front of him. "This is the last will and testament of William Jacob Reed," he began, his voice echoing in the tense silence. "Dated and executed 6 months ago." My heart clenched. 6 months ago. Right after he'd started meeting with Brennan. Right after Chloe's proposition. The will was standard at first. He left his personal effects, his savings, everything to my mother. He made sure she would be cared for. I held my breath. waiting for the part about Oakhaven. And regarding the property known as Oakhaven, comprising the main residence, outbuildings, and 200 acres of land, Brennan read, his voice never wavering, "I bequeath it in its entirety to my daughter, Amelia Marie Reed, with the stipulation that she maintains ownership and management of the property for a period of no less than 5 years, after which time she may make her own decisions regarding its disposition." A sob of relief escaped my lips. I squeezed my mother's hand. He'd done it. He'd kept his promise. He'd protected it. For me. But Brennan wasn't finished. He cleared his throat again. "However," he said, and that single word sucked all the air out of the room. "There is a codicil. A later addition to the will, dated 3 months ago." My blood ran cold. 3 months ago. At the height of the financial crisis, when Chloe was helping. "The codicil states," quotes, Brennan continued, his eyes scanning the document, "that due to the volatile and uncertain financial situation of the estate, the aforementioned bequest is amended. Full ownership of Oakhaven is hereby transferred to my niece, Chloe Elizabeth Vance, who has demonstrated both the business acumen and personal commitment necessary to stabilize and modernize the property, ensuring its financial future and preserving it for the family." The words didn't make sense. They were just sounds. Ugly, discordant sounds. I stared at Brennan, waiting for the punchline, for him to say he was joking. Chloe let out a soft, choked gasp. She brought a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with feigned surprise. "Oh, Uncle William," she whispered. What a burden. What an honor." I found my voice. It was a strangled, broken thing. "No, that's not possible. He would never," he promised me. Brennan's expression was unreadable. "The codicil is legally sound, Amelia. It was witnessed and notarized. His signature is verified." "But the debt!" I cried, desperation clawing at my throat. "The bank is calling the loan. She can't afford it either." "Ah," Chloe said, her voice now smooth and clear, all traces of fake surprise gone. She reached into her expensive leather bag and pulled out a document. "That's the other thing. I took the liberty of speaking with the bank. As the new owner, the soon-to-be new owner, I was able to renegotiate the terms. I've made a substantial payment from my own resources. The immediate crisis is averted. The bank is satisfied." She had played every single angle. She had manufactured the debt, forced my father into a corner, and then presented herself as the only solution. She had manipulated a grieving, desperate man into changing his will, probably whispering in his ear that I was too fragile, too sentimental, too incompetent to save his life's work. "You bitch," I breathed, the words tearing out of me. "Amelia," my mother gasped, horrified. "Sarah, it's okay," Chloe said, placing a calming hand on my mother's arm. "She's grieving. She's not herself." She looked at me then, and her mask of compassion fell away, revealing the cold, victorious predator beneath. "I'll need you to vacate the premises within 30 days, she said, her voice businesslike. "I have contractors coming to start the renovations. The spa, you know. It's going to be magnificent." She stood up, smoothing her dress. She walked over to me and leaned down, her lips close to my ear. Her whisper was for me alone, a venomous promise. "You'll never own this land, Amelia." That was the moment something broke inside me. The grief, the betrayal, the sheer audacity of her cruelty. It didn't crush me. It forged me. It turned my heart to ice and my will to steel. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her, and I made a promise to myself that I would dedicate every waking moment of my life to destroying her. The next month was a descent into a special kind of purgatory. Packing up my childhood home under the smug gaze of the woman who had stolen it was a fresh hell every day. Chloe would stop by unannounced, usually with an architect or a designer in tow, and they would march through the house, pointing at walls that held generations of family memories, and talking about knocking this down and opening that up. "We'll put the champagne bar right here, where that hideous old piano was," she'd announce, her voice echoing in the half-empty rooms. My mother, bless her, was a shell. She moved through the days in a medicated haze, her spirit broken by the loss of her husband and the betrayal of a girl she'd loved like a daughter. She'd just nod and agree with whatever Chloe said. "Yes, dear, that sounds lovely." It broke my heart all over again. I tried to talk to Mr. Brennan. I hired my own lawyer, a sharp young woman named Rachel Goldstein, who came highly recommended. We pored over the will and the codicil. Rachel's face grew grimmer with each passing hour. "It's rock solid, Amelia," she said finally, pushing her glasses up on her nose. We were in her small, modern office, a world away from Brennan's stuffy chambers. "The signature is perfect. The witnesses are reputable. One is a retired judge, for God's sake. There's no evidence of undue influence. We could challenge it, but without proof that Chloe coerced him or forged the document, we'd lose. And it would eat you alive in legal fees." "So that's it?" I asked, my voice flat. "She just wins?" "On this front, for now, yes," Rachel said. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "But people like her, they're never satisfied with one victory. They get arrogant, they get sloppy, they leave a trail. We just have to find it." Her words were a lifeline, a tiny, flickering flame of hope in the overwhelming darkness. Find the trail, I clung to it. I moved my mother and myself into a small, rented cottage on the edge of town. It was cramped and smelled of mildew, and the silence was deafening without the familiar creaks and sighs of Oakhaven. Ben was my rock. He helped us move, he brought us dinners, he held me at night when the nightmares came. Nightmares of Chloe's laughing face, of my father's confused and heartbroken eyes. I spent my days in a frenzy of research. I went through every single paper we'd moved from my father's study. I created a timeline of the last year of his life. I listed every interaction with Chloe, every financial anomaly, every whispered rumor. I was obsessed, a woman possessed. But the trail was cold. Chloe was too careful. She'd covered her tracks with the precision of a master criminal. The breakthrough came from the most unlikely of places. I was going through a box of my father's old financial records, looking for anything related to the mysterious bank loan, when a small, yellowed envelope fell out from between the pages of a ledger. It was addressed to my father, in my grandmother's elegant, looping handwriting. The postmark was from over 20 years ago. I almost tossed it aside, assuming it was just an old letter. But something made me open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a smaller, sealed envelope within it. The letter was from my grandmother to my father. "My dearest William, I'm entrusting this to you. Your brother came to see me today. He was in a state, desperate for money again. He mentioned some business venture with a man named Silas. Something that sounded too good to be true. You know how he is. He signed a paper, William. He was vague about the details, but he was scared. He said he put up the only thing of value he had left as collateral. I pressed him, and he finally admitted it. He signed over his parental rights to Chloe. It's just a formality, he said, just until the deal comes through and he can buy it back. But I know your brother. I fear he has made a terrible, irreversible mistake. I'm giving this to you for safekeeping. If anything should happen to me, or if things with Stephen go badly, you must protect that child. She is innocent in all of this. Her mother's name is on the attached envelope. Stephen never wanted anyone to know. Keep it safe. All my love, Mother." My heart was hammering against my ribs. Parental rights? Collateral? I turned to the smaller, sealed envelope. It was brittle with age. On the front, in my grandmother's hand, it said, "For Chloe, when she is old enough to understand." Her mother's story. With trembling fingers, I carefully broke the seal and pulled out the contents. There is a faded photograph of a beautiful young woman with dark hair and a warm smile, holding a baby. On the back, it said, "Isabel and Chloe, 6 months." And there was a letter from the woman Isabel, "My darling Stephen, I know you never wanted this. I know your family would never accept a girl like me. I'm leaving because I can't bear to see the shame in your eyes every time you look at our beautiful daughter. I'm going back home to New Orleans. Don't try to find me. Just please be good to her. Love her for both of us. She deserves so much more than this world will probably give her. Always. Isabel." And then, clipped to the letter, was a single, stark legal document, a voluntary termination of parental rights form, signed by Stephen Vance, and the name of the man he'd signed them over to, the man who had held them as collateral for a loan Silas Drummond. The world tilted on its axis. Chloe's father hadn't just been a deadbeat, he'd sold her. He'd signed away his rights to his own daughter to a loan shark named Silas Drummond. My father had known. My grandmother had known. And they had kept it secret, to protect Chloe's reputation, to protect her from the horrifying truth. But why had my father never told her? Why had he kept this locked away? Unless he'd planned to use it. Unless he'd suspected Chloe's true nature and kept this as an insurance policy, a nuclear option. And then the final, shocking piece of the puzzle fell into place. Silas Drummond. The name was familiar. I'd seen it recently. I scrambled through the papers on my floor, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I found it. The document from the bank that Chloe had waved in our faces, the one showing her payment to satisfy the mysterious debt. The loan hadn't been from a traditional bank. It had been from a private holding company. And the name of the company's CEO, listed in small print at the bottom of the page, was Silas Drummond. Chloe hadn't just manufactured the debt. She was in cahoots with the very man who had owned her, body and soul, since she was a child. She had conspired with the monster from her past to steal my future. The betrayal was so deep, so twisted. It was almost beautiful in its horror. She hadn't just wanted the land. She had wanted to become the powerful one in the relationship that had defined her as a victim. She had partnered with her own bogeyman to destroy the family she'd always resented. I sat on the floor of that cramped cottage, the ancient papers spread around me, and I started to laugh. It was a wild, hysterical sound that turned into sobs. I had it. I had the trail. It was more than I'd ever hoped for. It wasn't just financial fraud, it was conspiracy. It was emotional warfare. It was the key to everything. I called Rachel Goldstein. "Meet me at the office," I said, my voice shaking with a terrifying calm. I found it. I found the crack. And we're going to use it to bring her whole world down around her ears. The plan we formulated was complex, risky, and required every ounce of patience I possessed. We couldn't just confront her. She'd deny it, and Silas Drummond would likely make us, or worse, my mother, disappear. This had to be a public execution, a takedown so complete and so humiliating that there would be no recovery. The first step was Silas Drummond himself. Rachel, using her contacts, dug into him. He was a ghost. A financier who operated in the shadows, with a long, rumored history of loan sharking, extortion, and worse. But he was careful. He'd never been convicted of anything. He was a respected, if reclusive, businessman, on paper. We needed leverage on him. We needed to make him turn on Chloe. It was Ben who provided the next piece. "Silas Drummond," he said, scratching his head one night over dinner. "I know that name. My dad did some construction work for him, years ago. Out at that big, ugly modern place on Willow Lake." "Real piece of work," my dad said. Paranoid. Had a state-of-the-art security system. But my dad said the guy was obsessed with one thing. His wine cellar. It was like a fortress. Dad said he joked that the guy must have the crown jewels down there. A wine cellar. It was a thread, however thin. Rachel hired a private investigator, a discreet man named Leo, who looked like a friendly accountant but had the skills of a cat burglar. His mission: get into that cellar and see what Drummond was so desperate to protect. It took weeks. Leo cased the property, learned the security patrol schedules, the blind spots. Finally, he found his way in. What he found wasn't the crown jewels. It was better. Drummond's wine cellar was a front. Behind a false wall, accessed by a keypad whose code Leo managed to capture on a long-lens camera, was a small, climate-controlled room. And in that room were files. Not digital files, but old-fashioned paper ones. Ledgers detailing decades of illegal loans, extortion payments, and names. Hundreds of names, including judges, politicians, and business leaders whose reputations would be destroyed by their association with him. It was a treasure trove of blackmail material. And among the files, Leo took photos of one in particular, a file labeled Vance S. Oakhaven. The documents inside were damning. The original loan agreement between Stephen Vance and Silas Drummond, using his parental rights as collateral. And years later, a new agreement between Drummond and Chloe. She would orchestrate the takeover of Oakhaven. Once she gained full ownership, she would immediately sign over 51% of the property to Drummond to settle her father's ancient inflated debt and to fund her new, quote, development. She had never intended to build a spa for herself. She was building a criminal empire for the man who owned her. She was his puppet, and Oakhaven was the prize. We had her. We had him. But we needed more. We needed to orchestrate the perfect arena for the reveal. And fate, it seemed, was on my side. Chloe, in her arrogance, decided to throw a grand party at Oakhaven. A, quote, housewarming, she called it, though the house was still very much under construction. It was a chance to show off her victory to the entire town. The invitations went out to everyone, local dignitaries, business owners, all the people who had witnessed my family's downfall. My invitation arrived, a thick, creamy cardstock engraved with her name. It was the ultimate humiliation. She wanted me there to see her triumph. She wanted to rub my nose in it. Rachel and I looked at each other. "It's perfect," she said, a slow smile spreading across her face. "It's the perfect stage." The plan was set. Rachel would secure a temporary injunction based on the evidence we had, freezing any transfer of the property. She would serve the papers to Chloe at the party, in front of everyone. But that was just the opening act. The real drama would come from me. The day of the party dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully. I didn't wear black, the color of mourning. I wore a simple, elegant green dress, the color of new leaves, of resilience, of the land itself. Ben drove me to the edge of the property. "You sure about this?" he asked, his hand covering mine. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I said, and I meant it. The grief was still there, the anger was still there, but it was now a cold, focused instrument in my hand. I walked up the driveway I'd played on as a child. The place was transformed. Expensive cars were parked haphazardly on the lawn. Catering staff circulated with trays of champagne. The air was filled with the sound of laughter and a string quartet playing Vivaldi. It was a grotesque parody of the home I loved. I saw her immediately. She was holding court on the porch, surrounded by admirers, wearing a white dress that probably cost more than my car. She saw me, and her smile widened, a predator spotting easy prey. She excused herself and glided toward me. "Amelia, you came," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. She air-kissed my cheeks. "I'm so glad. I wanted you to see what I've done with the place. Well, the beginning of it anyway." "It's certainly different," I said, my voice calm. "Progress always is," she said, her eyes hard. She leaned in. "I hope you're not here to make a scene." "It would be so pathetic." "Oh, I wouldn't dream of it," I said, smiling. "I'm just here to enjoy the party." She looked suspicious for a moment, then shrugged, deciding I was too broken to be a threat. "Champagne?" she offered, snatching a glass from a passing tray and handing it to me. It was a gesture of supreme condescension. I took it. "To family," I said, raising the glass. "To family," she echoed, her smile not reaching her eyes. I mingled. I saw people I'd known my whole life. They looked at me with pity, with embarrassment, some with outright avoidance. I just smiled and nodded. Let them think I was defeated. Let them all think it. I saw my mother, sitting in a corner with a few of her old friends, looking small and lost. She gave me a weak, confused smile. My heart ached for her. "Soon," I promised her silently, "soon it will be over." Right on schedule, I saw Rachel enter the party accompanied by a county sheriff's deputy. They made a beeline for Chloe. The music faltered. Conversations died. All eyes turned to them. "Chloe Vance?" the deputy said, his voice official and loud in the sudden quiet. Chloe turned, her smile frozen. "Yes? Can I help you?" Rachel stepped forward. "Ms. Vance, I am attorney Rachel Goldstein, representing the interests of Amelia Reed and the estate of William Reed. This is a temporary injunction issued by the county circuit court, freezing all transactions, transfers, or alterations regarding the property known as Oakhaven, effective immediately. Chloe's face went from confused to furious. What is this? This is nonsense. On what grounds? On the grounds of fraud, conspiracy, and undue influence, Rachel said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. We have compelling evidence that you conspired with a known criminal, Silas Drummond, to fabricate a financial crisis, manipulate a grieving man into changing his will, and ultimately steal this property for your own financial gain and his. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Chloe's friends took a step back from her. You lying bitch! Chloe shrieked, her composure shattering. She pointed a trembling finger at me. This is her. She put you up to this. She's a jealous, bitter little girl who can't stand that I succeeded where she failed. This was my cue. I walked to the center of the porch, turning to face the crowd. Every eye was on me. I could feel my heart pounding, but my voice was steady. She's right about one thing, I said, my voice carrying across the stunned silence. I am bitter. I'm bitter that my father's kindness was exploited. I'm bitter that my family's home was stolen. And I'm bitter that the woman we took in, the woman we loved like a sister, could be capable of such monstrous betrayal. I turned to Chloe. But she's wrong about why I failed. I didn't fail. I was sabotaged. By you. I reached into the small clutch purse I was carrying and pulled out the sheaf of photocopied documents Rachel and I had prepared. I held them aloft. This is a document signed by your father, Chloe. A voluntary termination of parental rights. He signed you over as collateral for a loan to a man named Silas Drummond when you were a baby. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Chloe's face went sheet white. That's a lie, she screamed. And this, I continued, raising my voice over hers, is a recent agreement between you and that same man. In it, you agree to secure ownership of Oakhaven and immediately sign over the majority share to him. You didn't want this land to build a spa, Chloe. You wanted it to pay off your father's debt to the man who has owned you your entire life. You were never the mastermind. You were just the pawn. I started handing out copies of the documents to the people nearest to me. The whispers grew into a roar of shock and disgust. This is insane, Chloe yelled, her eyes wild with panic. They're forgeries. She's crazy. Am I? I asked softly. I looked over at the entrance to the driveway. Right on cue, a sleek, black town car pulled up. The door opened, and a tall, grim-faced man in an expensive suit got out. Silas Drummond. He'd received an anonymous tip that Chloe was double-crossing him, ready to cut him out of the deal. Leo had delivered it perfectly. Drummond strode toward the porch, his face a thundercloud. Chloe, he barked, his voice like gravel. What the hell is going on? I got a message you were trying to renege on our agreement. Chloe looked from him to me, to the horrified faces of the crowd. She was trapped. The carefully constructed fiction of her life was collapsing in real time. Silas, no, it's not. She's lying. It's a trick, she stammered, backing away from him. The only trick was the one you played on my family, I said. I turned to the crowd, my voice swelling with the emotion I'd held in check for so long. This land isn't about money. It's about legacy. It's about love. It's about the roots that hold us fast through every storm. My father knew that. And he wanted me to protect it. And I will. I looked directly at Chloe, at the ruin of her face. You told me I'd never own this land. You were wrong. It was always mine. It will always be mine. Not because of a piece of paper, but because I am my father's daughter. And you are nothing but the sad, lonely little girl your father sold for a quick buck. The silence that followed was absolute, and then it was broken by the sound of my mother. She was standing up, tears streaming down her face, but her head was held high. She walked toward me, through the crowd that parted for her. She didn't look at Chloe. She came straight to me and put her arms around me. My daughter, she said, her voice strong and clear for the first time in months. My brave, strong girl. That was the end of it. The deputy placed Chloe under arrest on the spot for fraud and conspiracy. Silas Drummond was taken in for questioning. His precious files seized by the FBI later that day based on the evidence we provided. The house, the land, everything was returned to me. The legal battles would drag on for months, but the war was over. I had won. In the end, Chloe pleaded guilty to avoid a longer sentence. She got 5 years in a white-collar prison. I heard she got out early for good behavior and moved to another state, trying to disappear. I don't know what happened to her, and I don't care. She's a ghost to me. Silas Drummond faced a mountain of charges and is currently serving a 20-year sentence in a maximum security prison. His empire of shadows was dismantled in the light. As for me, I live at Oakhaven. My mother lives here too, in the sunshine-filled suite she shared with my father. Her spirit has healed along with the land. Ben and I got married in the apple orchard, under the same tree my father used to push me on a tire swing. We have a little girl now. We call her Willa after her grandfather. I tell her stories about him, about the roots that run deep. The spa was never built. Instead, I built the future I'd always dreamed of. The sustainable farm is thriving. We have the farm-to-table shop and a program that brings city kids out to the country to learn where their food comes from. The land is alive, and it is loved. Looking back, that journey through betrayal was the hardest thing I've ever endured. It cost me my father. It nearly cost me my sanity. But it taught me that the deepest wounds can forge the greatest strength. It taught me to trust my instincts, to fight for what's mine, and to never, ever let anyone make you feel small for loving something deeply. If you're watching this, maybe you're fighting your own battle. Maybe you've been betrayed, hurt, made to feel like you don't matter. I'm here to tell you that you do. Your pain is valid, your anger is fuel. Use it. Dig deep, find your strength, and fight for your own Oakhaven, whatever that may be. The world is full of people like Chloe, who see kindness as weakness and legacy, as something to be bought and sold. Don't let them win. Protect your roots, nurture them, and watch them grow into something unshakable. Thanks for listening to my story.